By the time the sun was sinking, the world had become a place of cinders. They built the pyre higher than a man on horseback, a square mountain of cedar, juniper, dry brush, and the rich dark wood traders had once sold at a price fit for kings. It should have been raised for a Khal who had died with bells in his hair and blood on his eric, for a man whose horse had still been hot beneath him when his enemies fled. Instead, it had been built for the husk that remained after pride, wound, and witchcraft had done their work. Drogo lay within the timber wrapped in horsehide, broad as an oak trunk even in death, his heavy braid coiled against his side like something severed from another life. The smell of oil and resin thickened the evening air. Horses stamped and snorted beyond the circle of light. Men who had shouted themselves hoarse in battle spoke now in mutters or not at all. The last glow of day was copper on the flatlands, and the shadows crept long as spears. Daenerys Targaryen moved through it all as though she had stepped beyond pain and into some colder country where every sound came clear and every feeling had been honed to one bright edge. Her grief had not lessened. It had become simpler. The part of her that had begged, wept, and prayed was ash already. What remained walked with a queen's back and a widow's face. Mirri Maz Duur watched her over the gag of twisted cloth. Even bound, even with rawhide biting into wrists and ankles, the Magage's eyes held the same hard knowledge they had held when she had knelt in the dust of the Lamb Men's village, when she had told a girl that only death could pay for life. The woman had not begged. That angered Daenerys more than screaming might have done. Jorah came to her when the first torch was lit. His voice was low, rough with smoke and something gentler he tried to hide. "Khaleesi," he said, "you need not do this yourself. Let me." No. She did not turn. Her gaze rested on the pyre, on the shape of the man she had called her sun and stars. "You will not rob me of this. The fire is for him," Jorah said carefully. "Not for you. It is for us all." He fell silent at that. She could feel him wanting to say more. He had always had counsel ready, practical, grounded, often unwelcome. There had been nights on the long road when she had wanted him for that alone, because his voice came from a world that did not shift like sand underfoot. Tonight he stood helpless in his ringmail and boiled leather, his bare shoulders stooped, his broad hands empty. The dragon eggs waited on a carpet nearby, catching the torchlight and sending it back changed. The black and scarlet one seemed to swallow fire into itself. The green egg shimmered bronze along its scales. The cream-colored one glowed soft as old ivory. They had once been only wonders, princely gifts meant to flatter a bride. Then they had become a promise she spoke to in lonely hours. Now they felt heavier than stone and stranger than jewels. "Bring them," she said. Irri and Jikwi obeyed without a word, carrying the eggs as tenderly as if each one held a sleeping infant. Dora lingered a step behind, pale with fear and weariness. The girl had once known perfumes, mirrors, and warm pillows in Pentos. The wastes had scraped the softness from her. Still, she looked at the pyre as if she feared she might wake and find herself back in silk. Daenerys took the black egg first. It was warmer than she expected, and though that should not have been possible, she no longer found herself concerned with what should or should not be. She placed it beside Drogo's shoulder. The green went by his heart. The cream and gold she set near his folded hands. Jorah stared. "Those are worth a kingdom. They are my kingdom." Mirri made a sound behind the gag. A laugh, perhaps, or the start of one. Daenerys faced her at last. "You knew the price," she said. The Mage's eyes did not flinch. "I knew it too," Daenerys said, surprising herself with the calm in her own voice. "I was only too foolish to think I might be spared." Above them, the dark was deepening. One by one, the first stars appeared, remote and cold. Somewhere beyond the ring of horsemen, a child began to cry and was hushed at once. The khalasar had been a sea once, a bronze and leather tide that shook the earth when it moved. Now it was a handful of souls clinging to the wreckage of a dead man's dream. Some had fled when it became plain Drogo would never ride again. Some had been killed. Some were even now watching from the darkness, waiting to see whether the dragon bride would burn. She did not know how many still belonged to her, if any did. By the law of the Dothraki, a Khaleesi whose Khal had died should go to the Dosh Khaleen and live her remaining days in smoke and prophecy. By the law of the blood, a dragon's daughter should have had brothers, castles, banners, a place in the world. She had none of those. She had only the emptiness where her son had been, the memory of her husband's living weight, and the 3 impossible eggs among the dead man's bones. The torches passed from hand to hand. Ago stood nearest, his face unreadable beneath the long braid and the dust. Drogo's hand never strayed far from his whip. Rakara watched Daenerys as if he was trying to decide whether he served a woman or a wonder. They had been hers before, as much as any Dothraki could belong to another. Tonight, they looked like men standing on the edge of a cliff, uncertain whether the ground would hold. Daenerys took a torch. For one heartbeat, Jorah moved, instinct stronger than obedience. She saw it in the shift of his shoulders, the tightening of his jaw. Then, he stopped himself. When she touched flame to the brush at the pyre's base, the fire ran quick as gossip. Dry twigs crackled. Resin spat sparks into the dark. Smoke came first, thick and bitter and fragrant all at once, then a low orange bloom that turned red and gold where the wind fed it. Men stepped back. Horses screamed. Miri's body jerked against the rawhide. The gag muffled her cries at first. When the fire climbed high enough to catch the lower timbers, one knot burned through and the cloth fell away. Her voice tore into the evening, shrill with terror and rage, a sound too human to ignore and too hateful to pity. She shouted in the tongue of the Lamb Men, then in rough Valyrian, then in words Daenerys did not know. Drogo did not move. The eggs sat in their places among the flames like pieces on some ancient board. The heat should have driven Daenerys back. It struck her face, her bare throat, her hands, and she felt it as one feels rain after a winter spent indoors. Vivid, inevitable, not wholly unwelcome. Her skin prickled. Her breath came sharp and sweet with smoke. The world narrowed to the roar of the pyre and the rising column of sparks. "Khaleesi!" Jorah shouted once. She stepped forward. His cry became a curse. Hands reached. She heard them as if from far away. She remembered a house with a red door that might never have existed in quite the way she held it in memory. She remembered Viserys with his bitterness bright as a naked blade. She remembered the hot press of Drogo's palm over her swollen belly, and the rough wonder in his face when he had spoken of the son who would mount the world. She remembered a babe who had never drawn breath. Grief broke over her, and beneath it there was something else, something older and fiercer than grief. The fire opened to her. It took her hair first, crisping the loose silver strands that the wind had whipped across her face. It licked the linen from her shoulders and turned it to blackened tatters that fluttered away. The heat wrapped her, filled her lungs, slid under her skin. She heard Miri screaming and then not screaming. She heard wood splitting, horses shrilling, men shouting her name or another name she had not yet earned. Then there was only light. She went to Drogo where he lay among the flames, and when she touched the black egg she felt it stir. Not crack, not shudder, stir. A living thing waking in the shell. Daenerys laughed then, though later she would never remember the sound of it. The green egg split in a line bright as molten metal. Something sharp pressed against her palm from within the cream and gold shell. Smoke swirled around her like veils. Fire ran over her bare feet and did not consume her. She sank to her knees amid the roaring heart of the pyre and gathered life from death with blisterless hands. When dawn came, the fire had burned down to a hill of glowing embers and white ash. The first men to creep close saw a pale shape in the smoking ruins and froze where they stood. The second rank fell to their knees before they had truly seen what it was. By the time the sun lifted red over the waste, silence lay over the camp heavier than fear. Daenerys sat among the ashes, naked, blackened, and unburnt. Her hair was gone save for singed silver stubble against her scalp. Soot striped her skin. Her eyes looked almost violet in the new light. A black dragon clung to one shoulder, its wet wings folded tight against its body, smoke curling from its nostrils. The green one was at her breast, tiny claws pricking skin as it rooted and hissed. The cream and gold had twined itself about her arm like some living jeweled bracelet, opening pale jaws to taste the morning air. Jorah was the first to bow his head all the way to the earth. Others followed. Ago, Jogo, Rakaro, the handmaids, old men, women, children, died. A score of riders who had not fled. Perhaps 20, perhaps fewer. The number did not matter. What mattered was the shape of them in the dirt. Blood and ash and dawn lay between them. Daenerys looked down at the creatures in her arms, and for the first time since the bells had fallen silent in Drogo's braid, something like certainty touched her. The morning belonged to the dragons. They were hideous and beautiful in equal measure, soft-bellied, sharp-clawed, their bodies still slick in places where the shell's last dampness clung. The black one was the largest, though not by much, all midnight scales and red spines that caught the sun like wet blood. He stared at the world as if it were already his. The green was leaner, bronze glinting beneath the jade. The cream and gold moved with a serpent's eerie grace, curious and bright-eyed. When Daenerys rose, they went with her. The black dug claws into her shoulder and spread his small wings as though to claim the dawn. The green hissed at anyone who came too near. The pale one tested the air with a forked black tongue and made a sound like steam escaping. Men who had cut throats without blinking edged back from creatures no longer than their forearms. Jorah brought her a cloak. It had belonged to Drogo once, a lion's pelt lined in soft leather, and though it hung heavy with smoke, it was warm. He draped it over her carefully, as one might cover a wounded queen or a holy thing. His hands shook only once, when the black dragon turned its head and fixed him with molten red eyes. "Are you burned?" he asked. "I do not think so." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, rasped by smoke yet steady. She touched the singed stubble at her scalp and found it no more troubling than the loss of a garment. Only changed. That much is plain. Something like wonder moved behind the lines of his face. But wonder did not suit Sir Jorah Mormont for long. He glanced past her toward the camp and what remained of their people. "Changed or not, Khaleesi, we must move quickly. Men will hear of this. Some will come to worship. More will come to steal." She looked over the camp. The pyre had consumed Drogo, Miri, and most of the rich goods piled with them. Ash drifted over saddles, bedrolls, overturned baskets. Here and there, crows had begun to gather, bold enough to hop near the edges of the ruin, and then dart away whenever one of the dragons stirred. Too many places were empty. The great khalasar was gone. All that remained to her were the faithful, the curious, the helpless, and those too slow or frightened to leave in the night. The people waited for her to speak. Even the Dothraki children had gone still, their dark eyes huge in dusty faces. The old women whispered to one another. Irri knelt with both hands clasped over her mouth. Jackie's cheeks were wet. Dora seemed half afraid to raise her gaze, as if looking on Daenerys too long might blind her. Daenerys stepped clear of the ashes. The ground was cool beneath her bare feet. "Bring me water," she said. It came at once. She drank, then poured a little into her hand and offered it to the cream and gold dragon. He lapped greedily, little black jaws working. The green snapped at the cup and nearly tipped it. The black did not beg. He clawed higher on her shoulder and glared until she laughed and held the water to him. And then he drank with all the fierce entitlement of a Khal reborn in miniature. "Have they names?" Dora whispered. "They do." She looked first at the black. The word came before thought. "Drogon," she said softly. The dragon lifted his head and opened his wings, as if he recognized the claim in it. The green she named for the brother she had loved best, though he had died before she could remember him truly. The prince whose songs and beauty had filled Viserys' bitter mouth for years. Regal. The name felt like an old wound kissed closed. The cream and gold she named for the brother who had been cruel and weak and proud, because blood was blood however twisted it ran, and because dead men carried less venom than the living memory of them. Viserion. Jorah heard the last of those, and glanced at her, searching perhaps for pain or hesitation. If he found either, he said nothing. Ago came forward then, went to one knee, and pressed his fist over his heart. Drogo and Rakaro joined him. Around them, others shifted uneasily. Dothraki custom did not bend for women, even women who walked out of fire with dragons on their shoulders. Their law had no easy place for what stood before them. "You are blood of my blood," Daenerys told the three riders. Ago lifted his face. "We were blood of the stallion who mounts the world. And he is gone," she said. It hurt to say it plainly, but truth had become a blade she could not afford to sheathe. His blood riders are dead or fled. His khalasar is broken. I do not ask you to serve me as a man serves a cow. I ask you to ride beside me as men ride beside the dragon. Nay, willing, da. Drogo frowned. A woman cannot choose blood riders. Daenerys looked at Drogon. The tiny dragon's throat bulged. A thread of smoke escaped his jaws. The gathered people recoiled as one body. "A woman cannot do many things," she said. "Yet I am here." Rakaro's expression changed first. Not to joy. Dothraki men were seldom joyful about any breach in custom. But understanding came to him, and after it something sterner. He bowed his head again. "Then I am blood of your blood, Khaleesi." Drogo followed, grudging and fierce. Ago last of all. Though once he yielded, there was no holding back in him. "I ride where you ride," he said. The words rippled outward. Not acceptance, not yet, but the shape of a new order had been spoken aloud. Daenerys turned to the rest. "Those who wish to go to V's Dothrak may go. I will not send you to the Dosh Khaleen, and I will not go there myself. Those who fear me may leave before dusk. Those who remain will eat beneath my hand and ride beneath my command." Murmurs passed through the crowd. An old rider spat into the dust and limped away at once, refusing even to look back. A young mother drew her children close and stood her ground. A boy no older than 12 stepped forward, knelt, and bowed so deeply his forehead touched the earth. Others copied him. A few more turned away. Jorah waited until the noise had died. "And where do you command them to ride, Khaleesi?" The dragons shifted against her, warm and strange. Their claws caught in the lion's fur, in her skin, in the very idea of her. The answer rose from somewhere below fear. "Home," she said. The words seemed to startle everyone, including herself. Jorah's brow furrowed. "Home is a hard road from here. It is across the sea," she said. "All my life I have been told the 7 kingdoms are mine by blood and birth. My brother dreamed of them and starved us with his dream. My husband promised them to our son. Both are dead. The dream remains. The sea is poison water to these people. Then some will leave." Her voice sharpened. "Let them." He studied her for a long moment. "If you mean to cross soon, there is only one chance. West over the Dothraki Sea will kill us before it brings us to a friendly port. South to the slave cities is no safer and less honorable. East there is Qarth. Ships can be had there if we live to see the walls. This Qarth, Dish." She had heard the name in traders' tales, jeweled and far and rich. It had always sounded to her like a city from someone else's dream. "There are captains in Qarth who would carry silk, spice, or slaves to the ends of the earth if coin were good enough. You have jewels left, some horses, a few loyal souls, and now," his gaze flicked to the dragons. Daenerys looked east. The horizon wavered in the morning heat, pale and pitiless. Somewhere beyond that shimmering emptiness lay a city, and beyond the city, the sea, and beyond the sea, a continent she knew only through stories, exile, and resentment. It should have frightened her. Instead, it steadied her. The road to V's Dothraki led backward. Every road worth taking did not. "Then we ride for Qarth," she said. Dora gasped softly. "Across the Red Waste? If that is the road." Jorah let out the breath he had been holding. "It will be cruel. So is mourning." She gave orders after that because orders were easier than grief. Water was to be gathered, food counted, the strongest horses spared, and the weakest slaughtered for meat. The dead were to be stripped of what could still serve the living. No one was to approach the dragons without leave. She spoke as if command had always lived in her mouth, though inside she was cold to the bone and scarcely knew how she stayed upright. When all was in motion, she knelt by the last of the pyre and sifted ash through her fingers. Beneath the white and gray, she found a scrap of half-melted bell metal from Drogo's braid. She closed her hand around it until the edges bit. "My sun and stars," she thought. And this time the tears came without breaking her. When she rose again, the dragons clung more tightly than before, as if they knew the soundless shape of sorrow and had chosen her for its nest. They left the dead to the crows and rode east beneath a sky without mercy. By noon, the camp was gone behind them, swallowed by distance and glare. The land flattened into scrub, salt-crusted hollows, thorny brush, and stretches of hard white earth that threw the sun back at them until every man rode half-blind. Heat rose in visible waves. The few clouds that had drifted in the morning burned off before mid-morning and did not return. In the long reaches of the Red Waste, even shadow seemed a luxury. Daenerys rode her silver at the head of the column. The mare's coat shone pale as moonlight when clean. Now dust filmed her to the color of old pearl. Drogon perched between Daenerys' shoulder and neck, talons carefully set, as if the beast already understood that claws too deep would lose him the perch he favored. Rhaegal slept in the crook of her arm when the motion of riding soothed him, then woke in sudden spurts of hissing hunger. Viserion preferred the warmth under the lion pelt, pushing his narrow head out from time to taste the dry air and glare at the world with molten gold eyes. The khalasar, if so small and ragged a thing could still be called that, stretched no more than a few dozen souls. Most were on foot, their horses too weak or too precious to bear them except by turns. There were women with babies slung against the hip, boys carrying skin bags bigger than their torsos, old men leaning on spears more than using them. The riders were fewer than Daenerys had hoped and more than Jorah had expected. Every hour one or another face disappeared from the line and was not seen again. At first, those departures came in silence. A rider would ease away while the rest pressed forward under the hammering sun, then turn his mount west or north and trust to speed and stubbornness. Daenerys saw the first and let him go. She saw the second too and said nothing. By the third, Drogo had worked himself into sullen fury. "They are oathbreakers," he snarled, drawing level with her. "Give the word, and I will ride them down." "With what?" Jorah asked before she could answer. "You have one horse under you and thirst ahead." Drogo scowled at him. "I have a whip and hands enough." Daenerys turned in the saddle to watch the deserter become a dark fleck against the blazing land. He did not look back. His wife had gone with him, and their child wrapped in a cloth the color of dried blood. "Let them go," she said. Drogo made a noise of disgust. "Soon there will be none left. Then I will know the names of the ones who remain." After that he held his tongue, though ill humor rolled off him like heat from stone. Toward evening they halted in a dry watercourse where a few stunted bushes broke the wind. The people sank down where they stood. Hands moved wearily over saddle knots, water skins, strips of salt meat. The dragons woke with the change in pace and demanded food at once. Drogon bit Daenerys hard enough on the wrist to draw blood when she made him wait. Jiki gave a little cry and reached for a cloth. Daenerys only watched the bead of red well up. Drogon's nostrils flared. He bent his neck and licked the blood from her skin with a hot, rough tongue before snapping at the strip of horseflesh Jorah cut for him. "Hear that?" said Aggo softly. The green and cream dragons had fallen upon their own pieces with ferocious squeals. Tiny bones cracked between their teeth. Wings mantled possessively over red meat. Around them, the murmuring camp had gone quiet again. "They eat like kings," Ago finished. "Like dragons," Daenerys said. They camped without fire. Smoke would only have mocked their thirst, and there was little enough wood to waste. Night came fast and bitter after the day's furnace. Above them, the stars flamed cold and endless, clearer than she had ever seen them in Pentos or beneath a tiled roof. Daenerys lay wrapped in lion hide and rough wool, the dragons pressed to the warmth of her body, and listened to the breathing of the camp until Jorah came and crouched beside her. He had set his sword within easy reach, but moved with care, as if he feared to startle not her but the creatures at her breast. "You should sleep. So should you. I have learned to do with less." She almost smiled at that. "Is it the North that teaches such things?" "The North teaches many hard lessons." He settled on his haunches, forearms resting on his knees. In the starlight, the silver in his beard looked like frost. The sea beyond it is gray and cold. The wind can flay a man raw in winter. Yet men there call themselves lucky if they have a roof to hold against the storm. Daenerys turned her face toward him. "Tell me of it." He looked faintly surprised. "The North. Westeros." A pause. Perhaps he had not expected her to ask so soon, not on the first night of their mad eastward ride toward ships and a country that had never once opened its arms to her. But when Jorah spoke, his voice lost some of its habitual caution. Exiles speak differently of lost countries than men who still believe they may return at will. He told her of the narrow sea first because it lay between them and all else. Of gray water under gray skies, and summer mornings when the light broke like silver across the swells. Of cliffs, harbors, and gulls. Of the smell of salt that got into wool and hair. Then of Dragonstone, black and bitter on its island, all carved dragons and smoking mountain under a hard sea wind. Of King's Landing with its crowded hills, muddy alleys, and the Red Keep crouched above like a thing that had fed too well. Of the Reach, rich and green. Of the Stormlands where rain came sideways. Of the Vale's mountains and the North's dark woods. Of Dorne, dry and red and proud, where the sands could blaze as cruelly as any waste, but the people remembered old wrongs longer than any other kingdom. "Dorne," Daenerys said softly. The word seemed to hold its own heat. "Why do they remember? Because Elia of House Martell was sister to Prince Rhaegar?" Jorah glanced away toward the stars. When King's Landing fell, her murder and the murder of her children were laid at the feet of lions. But lions did not act alone. Men in Dorne have long memories. Some there might look on a daughter of Aerys and see use in her. "Use," she repeated. "That is politics." The word had always been Viserys' world, not hers. He had spoken of lords and banners and traitors until such things lost shape and became nothing more than the furniture of grievance. Yet now, under the stars, with dragons warm against her ribs and the red waste waiting for dawn, Daenerys began to understand that names and grudges and marriages were also weapons. Not bright weapons like our axe. Sharper in their fashion. "If we reach Qarth," she said, "we buy ships. If we find ships, we go west. If we go west, we land in Dorne." Jorah did not correct her use of "we." "If we reach Qarth," he said, "you may find the city less generous than its merchants' boasts. Then I will make them afraid to refuse me." The answer came more fiercely than she intended. Jorah's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "That," he said, "they may already be." He rose then and left her to the stars. Daenerys watched his broad back move through the sleeping camp. Somewhere an infant whimpered. Somewhere a horse coughed. The night smelled of dust and leather and blood from the scraps the dragons had devoured. She touched Drogon's warm side. "Hear that?" she whispered. "We are going home." He opened one red eye, as if to say home was any place he set fire to. In the morning, 3 more had gone. Daenerys gathered the remainder and spoke before anyone could pretend not to understand. "The sea is ahead," she told them. Ships are ahead. Those who will not cross poison water may leave now. Those who stay will share what we have and face what comes. No one moved at first. Then a rider with a scar split through one eyebrow spat into the dust and turned his horse. 2 others followed him. A woman with a child stepped out from the line and went with them. The boy who had bowed on the first morning stayed where he was, skin cracking at the lips, eyes fixed on her dragons. Aggo said nothing. Shogo muttered a curse. Rakaro lifted his spear. The column shortened again and went on. By the end of the 2nd day, Daenerys had stopped counting who left and begun counting only who remained. The days lost their edges after that. Heat, thirst, riding, halting, sleeping, rising. Each one ran into the next until time became nothing but the state of the sun and the weight of water left in their skins. Daenerys learned the sound a man made when hope gave out before breath did. She learned how children cried when there was no spit left in their mouths for tears. She learned how far an old horse could be pushed, and how quietly a mother could weep while butchering the mount that had carried her husband. The Red Waste showed them no mercy and no particular malice. It simply was. That was its horror. It did not hate them enough to strike. It only refused to care whether they lived. Rakaro, Jogo, and Aggo rode out each morning in different directions to scout, returning near sunset with dust on their faces and little to report. Once Aggo found a trickle in a shaded cleft where the stone ran red with mineral stains. The water tasted of rust and rot, but they drank it all the same. Once Jogo brought back 2 thin desert hares. Once Rakaro returned empty-handed and angry, his spear tipped with the blood of a carrion bird he had killed because there had been nothing else living to strike. Daenerys did not spare herself. She rode when others rode, walked when children needed her horse, and gave away more of her own water than Jorah thought wise. "They will need you alive more than they need one more mouthful," he told her one noon when the sun stood overhead like a hammer, and Jorah had to be lifted back onto a saddle. "They need both," Daenerys said. He could not answer that, because both were true. Jorah failed faster than the others. She had never been made for hardship. Even in Pentos, before the marriage, she had been all perfume and laughter. Slender wrists, soft hands, and a practiced look that promised obedience while calculating advantage. Yet she had come with Daenerys through the grass sea, had dressed her, soothed her, whispered of womanly arts in the privacy of the tent. Whatever else she had been part of the little world Daenerys had first learned to govern. Now that world was burning away. Jorah's lips cracked until they bled, her voice thinned to a papery whisper. Twice she slipped from her horse because she had no strength left in her thighs. The second time, Jiki tried to chide her and ended by crying into both hands. At dusk of the 6th day, when the wind came cold and mean over the flats, Jorah lay with her head in Daenerys' lap and stared at the darkening sky. Drogon dozed curled against Daenerys' hip, one wing half spread. Rhaegal and Viserion were squabbling over a scrap of gristle nearby, their tiny roars almost absurdly fierce in so weak a quarrel. "Do you think we shall see the sea?" Jorah asked. "Yes." The lie was gentle, and Daenerys hated herself for how quickly it came. "I have never liked ships," Jorah murmured. "They smell of fish and men. But I think I should like to see it once if it is blue enough." "It is blue," Daenerys said. "Or green, or gray. Jorah says it changes with the sky. Then perhaps I should wait for a good sky." Her lashes fluttered. Daenerys touched the girl's forehead and found heat there, dry and dangerous. There were no herbs left that might help, no magi to trust, no clean, cool chamber where illness could be coaxed out by comfort. Only wool, rough hands, and prayer. She had learned how much prayer was worth. Jorah crouched beside them. "Let Irri sit with her while you sleep. I am not tired." He gave her a look that would have suited an obstinate child. "You are exhausted. So are we all." "That is precisely my point." She should have laughed and did not. Instead, she looked back toward the dark horizon, where nothing moved but heat ghosts fading with the light. "Tell me of King's Landing," she said suddenly. Jorah frowned. No. Now. He settled with a soft grunt, surrendering to the demand. It stinks. Daenerys blinked. That is not what songs say. Songs do not stand beside open drains in summer. His mouth twitched. The city sits on 3 hills. Aegon's high hill bears the Red Keep. Rhaenys Hill has the Great Sept. Visenia's hill the Dragon Pit, though that is a shell now. The streets below are crooked, crowded, and loud. There are markets where you may buy lemons, eels, lace from Myr, or a knife slipped under your ribs depending which turning you take. Was my family loved there? Jorah considered too long before answering. That alone told her more than any smooth lie would have done. Some loved them, he said at last. Some feared them. Most did as most small folk do. They loved peace when they had it and hated whoever threatened bread. Daenerys absorbed that in silence. It was not how Viserys had spoken of the usurper's realm. In her brother's telling, all Westeros had waited with hidden dragon banners for the day the true heirs returned. It had never seemed wholly real to her, even as a child. Yet hearing it denied aloud hurt in a different way, because it made the task ahead both smaller and greater. If no kingdom longed for her, she would have to compel it to. What of Robert Baratheon? She asked. A great fighter once, a king of appetites. He will not yield because a girl arrives at his shore, whatever blood she bears. A girl with dragons. That bought her a true silence. The dragons chose that moment to hiss at one another and snap. Viserion got the gristle. Rhaegal struck his brother with a bony wing, then scampered toward Daenerys and climbed awkwardly up the lion hide to settle against her chest, sulking like a princeling denied a toy. Jorah looked at him, then at her. A girl with dragons, he allowed, is a different matter. The stars came out one by one. Cold silver light washed the camp. Far off, something howled. A desert thing, lean and hungry. Horses rolled their eyes and stamped. Aggo and Jogo went to the edge of the sleeping line with spears in hand, little enough against whatever dark prowled, but better than surrender. Daenerys stroked the ridge of scales along Rhaegal's back. They were growing. Not by much. A man could still kill one with a good stone or a quicker knife. But each morning she felt more weight in them, more appetite, more certainty. They no longer seemed like fragile miracles. They seemed like promises with teeth. When at last Jorah rose again, he paused. If we reach Dorne, he said almost reluctantly, they may not love you either. No. She watched the stars reflected in Drogon's half-lidded eye. They may hate my enemies more. That is often enough. He went back to his watch. Dora slept badly, moaning in dreams. Daenerys did not sleep at all. She sat until dawn with dragons warm against her, and the word Dorne turning slowly in her head like a coin being tested for true metal. By the next evening, 2 old men had died walking, and another horse had to be butchered. Daenerys chewed stringy meat that tasted of smoke and iron, swallowed without hunger, and wondered whether every road to power began by stripping softness from the mouth. On the 9th day, as the sun was sinking red and swollen through the haze, Aggo rode back faster than he had left. There are walls ahead, he said. No one cheered. They were too weary for cheering and had lived too long on mirages. But something like life moved through the camp again. Daenerys sat straighter in the saddle. Even Jorah looked briefly younger. What kind of walls? Stone. Broken. Empty, I think, yet there are palms. Water, Daenerys thought. Not walls. Water died. They pushed on in the dark by moonlight rather than waste a night. More than once, someone stumbled and cursed or had to be hauled upright. Children were carried. The horses' heads hung low. The dragons woke and shifted at the change in rhythm, little claws pricking through cloth and skin as if to remind her that even now, she bore fire into a place built for thirst. Just before dawn, the ruined city rose out of the waste ahead of them like a dream remembering itself. The city had died long before they found it. Its gates hung broken. Its towers had split and sagged under years of heat and neglect. Sand had drifted through courtyards and against the lower stories until some doorways were half buried. Yet within the ruin there was shade, and under the shade there was water enough to make grown men sink to their knees and sob. They came through a street lined with cracked marble lions, and into a square where a fountain still trickled from the mouth of a stone fish. The sound of it, small, careless, impossible, stopped the entire column. For one breath, no one moved. Then the square dissolved into chaos. Women rushed forward with bowls and hands and empty skins. Boys crowded close enough to be cuffed away from the basin. An old man dropped flat and pressed his face to the wet stone, drinking like a beast. Jorah barked orders, trying to turn desperation into sequence. Aggo waded into the crush with the flat of his spear shaft, forcing the strongest back so the children might drink first. Rakaro swore loud enough to wake the dead. Jogo laughed once, hoarse and unbelieving, then knelt and put both hands into the falling water as if he needed to feel it before he trusted it. Daenerys dismounted in silence. The square smelled of dust, old stone, and the green living scent of palms. There were fruit trees beyond the broken arcade, figs, pomegranates, maybe dates farther in. Birds flitted among the branches, thin and quick. In the far corner of the square lay 3 skeletons in rusted mail, white bones tangled where they had died decades before. The city had offered water and silence, not safety. Drogon leapt from her shoulder to the fountain rim, spread his black wings, and hissed at his reflection in the shallow basin. Rhaegal and Viserion joined him moments later, splashing clumsily through the thin run of water. Their delight was so fierce and absurd that Daenerys laughed for the first time in many days. She drank after the children had been served. The water was warm and tasted faintly of stone, but to her it might as well have been snowmelt from the wall Jorah had described. It slid down her throat and into every hollow place inside her. Only when that first wild need had eased did she begin to see the city for itself. Vis Teloro, Jorah called it, though whether he knew the name from map or tale he did not say. Bones lay in many houses, some clean, some clothed in scraps long since eaten by time. In one courtyard, a collapsed roof had sheltered painted walls, blue flowers, red birds, a woman's hand reaching toward a moon. In another stood a row of stone jars filled with grain so desiccated it had turned to dust at a touch. A toy horse of carved wood lay in an alley beneath a drift of sand. There was plague here, perhaps, Jorah said when they walked the streets later. Or war, or both. Daenerys thought of the skeletons, of the water still running while those who had needed it died all around it. They had a city and lost it, she said. We have nothing and yet we go on. Jorah glanced toward the dragons who were stalking a lizard in a courtyard with all the solemn commitment of knights besieging a castle. Not nothing. By noon they had found more cisterns, a granary half intact, and trees laden enough to keep them from starvation for a few blessed days. The people moved through the ruins like ghosts invited temporarily back into flesh. Children chased each other in the shade. Women washed dust from their hair. Men slept flat on cool stone with mouths open. Relief transformed them, but only partly. Hunger had carved itself too deep. Dora never rose from the litter. They carried her into a chamber whose roof still held and laid her on blankets near a narrow window where the light came soft and green through palm fronds. Irri bathed her face. Jikki rubbed her hands. Daenerys sat beside her and felt time slipping away grain by grain, as invisible and unstoppable as the sand outside. Dora opened her eyes once in the heat of afternoon. They looked enormous in her wasted face. "Is this Qarth?" she whispered. "No," Daenerys said. "Good." The barest smile touched cracked lips. "Then I need not make myself pretty. There will be time for that later." Liar. The word held no sting. "You have grown good at it." Daenerys bowed her head over their joined hands. Dora's fingers were dry and weightless, as if she had begun already to become one more relic in a dead city. "Stay," Daenerys said, the plea escaping before pride could catch it. Dora's gaze drifted to the window. "I am very tired." Those were the last clear words she spoke. Toward evening, her breathing shallowed, then paused. Then came again in little startled catches. Daenerys sent the others out when the end drew near. She sat alone with the dying girl while shadows lengthened across the chamber floor. Outside, somewhere in the square, one of the dragons shrieked with triumph after catching whatever lizard it had pursued. Dora died with her head turned toward the light. Daenerys closed the girl's eyes and remained still for a long while after that, because to move was to admit there would be another task, another body, another part of her old life given to the waste. When at last she rose, she did so with the same cold steadiness that had carried her through the pyre. Grief had stopped asking permission. It entered where it pleased. They buried Dora in a small garden behind the chamber, where the roots of a fig tree had cracked the paving stones apart. The earth there was shallow and stubborn, but Aggo and the boy who had first knelt after the hatching dug until their hands blistered. Daenerys laid a strip of blue silk over the body before the dirt covered it. No pyre this time. She could not spare the wood, and besides, some part of her wanted one grave in this wandering life that would stay where she left it. When the burial was done, Jorah came to stand beside her among the fig leaves and broken stone. "We could remain here some days," he said. "Let the people mend. Send scouts farther east. Perhaps there is a caravan road near. We stay only long enough to fill our skins and our bellies." He made an impatient sound. "Khaleesi, look at them. Half can barely stand. Then half will die if we linger until some cow finds us in these ruins, or some slaver caravan." She turned to face him. "This city is a tomb with fruit trees. It is not salvation." His eyes narrowed, then softened despite himself. "You are harder than you were. I am less foolish." The words struck deeper than she meant them to. Jorah inclined his head, accepting the wound because perhaps he thought he deserved some part of it. "Then be less foolish a little more slowly," he said. "Give them 2 days. 3. She gave him 2. Those days passed in a strange peace. They washed clothes, mended tack, dried fruit, cut meat, cleaned weapons. Rakaro and Jogo rode scouting sorties farther east and north. Aggo found a storage room where jars of oil had remained sealed. It felt like uncovering treasure in a dead king's grave. The dragons hunted birds in the courtyards and came back preening, their bellies round with success. Every time Daenerys looked at them, she saw how quickly they changed. Wings broader, necks longer, hunger deeper. They slept less and tested everything with teeth and flame-hot breath. On the second night in the ruined city, Qarth had not yet appeared. Zara was still a rumor, and Qarth only a name somewhere beyond the dark. Daenerys sat on a low wall beneath the fig tree and watched the stars emerge between broken towers. She had buried a handmaid that day, a husband days before, and a child before that. The world she had entered at 13 had burned so thoroughly that the girl who had crossed the sea to wed a barbarian felt now like another dead thing left in some abandoned chamber. Yet below the grief, there was purpose, and purpose moved. When Rakaro returned at dawn on the 3rd day, horse lathered and eyes bright, he brought the first real news they had heard since leaving the pyre. "There's a road ahead," he said, "and riders who speak of Qarth. 3 days, perhaps 4, if the week do not slow us too greatly." Daenerys looked east again, toward walls she had never seen, captains she had never met, ships on a sea that still existed mostly in description. Behind her, the fig leaves stirred over Dora's grave. "Then we leave at midday," she said. Qarth appeared first as brightness on the horizon. For half a day, Daenerys mistook it for heat haze, a trick of sun on air. The road Rakaro had found proved little more than 2 worn lines through stone and dust, yet it was a road all the same, and the knowledge that others had traveled it lifted the people's feet when strength alone might not. They moved slower than Daenerys wished and faster than Jorah thought possible. Men who should have collapsed by noon kept walking because a city existed ahead, and the mind, once given an image to pursue, can bully the flesh past reason. By evening of the 4th day, the brightness had sharpened into walls. Not one wall, but three, each rising behind the last in pale, impossible tears that caught the dying sun and flung it back in ivory, rose, and gold. Towers pricked the sky. Great gates of ironwood and bronze gleamed. Beyond the outer defenses, Daenerys glimpsed rooftops, domes, and banners floating in the hot air. After the Red Waste, Qarth seemed less like a city than an answer dreamed by thirsty men. It nearly turned them away. The guards at the outer gate wore linen and bright lacquered scales, their beards oiled and forked, their spears more ornament than necessity. They stared at the ragged column as one might stare at a line of corpses walking. Dust-caked women, hollow-eyed riders, children too tired even to beg. A young queen wrapped in smoke-dark lion hide with 3 small dragons clinging to her body like living heraldry. Jorah stepped forward to speak before insult could sharpen into danger. "We seek entry," he said in trade talk smooth enough to show he had used it often. "Water, food, and audience with the honorable men who rule this city." The guard captain's expression did not change. "Qarth has water for those who can pay." Daenerys slid from her horse before Jorah could answer. Her legs nearly buckled. She hid it by taking a step forward. The bronze fittings on the gate reflected her own gauntness back at her in warped gleams. "I will pay." The captain's gaze moved over the survivors, the worn tack, the reduced train. "With what?" "With memory if you turn us away," Daenerys said. He laughed, and some of the men around him joined in. The sound was not cruel so much as bored. Qarth had seen caravans rise and fall for centuries. Another beggar queen at its gates was no novelty. Memory spends poorly in the markets. Before Daenerys could speak again, one of the guards closer to the wall made a choking sound and stumbled back. Drogon had unfolded himself from her shoulder and spread his wings to their full, meager span. Smoke curled from his nostrils. Rhaegal followed with a hiss like oil on a hot pan. Viserion climbed higher up her arm and opened pale jaws lined with needle teeth. The laughter stopped. For a few breaths no one moved. Then the heavy curtains in a pavilion beside the gate parted, and 3 figures emerged who had clearly not been there moments before, or had been there so still that she had not noticed them. The first wore a gown of many colors so rich and flowing that it seemed to make a mockery of dust itself. Strings of jewels covered his throat and wrists. His eyes were bright as polished obsidian, his smile practiced and warm. The second was thinner than any living man had a right to be, his blue lips making the rest of his face look corpse pale. The third was hidden beneath lacquered wood and shadow, a woman in a mask of red lacquer and dark garments that drank the light. "Sorrow Zohan Daxos," Jorah murmured under his breath. "Pyre and Quaith of the Shadow." Daenerys knew none of them and yet felt instantly that each looked at her in a different hunger. Xaro's gaze went first to her face, then the dragon's, then back to her as if measuring value in several currencies at once. "This is no common petitioner," he said to the guards in a mellifluous voice. "This is Daenerys Stormborn, if report speaks true, the mother of dragons." Ay. The title ran through the watching men like a ripple through silk. Pyre smiled a little. It was not a kind smile. The warlock streamed of fire on the waist. Quaith said nothing. Behind her mask, only her eyes were visible, dark and unreadable. Daenerys held their gazes one by one. She would not bow. She would not plead if she could help it. Her people stood behind her with the reek of sweat, want, and dead hopes upon them. Whatever entered this city must enter as more than a curiosity. "I am Daenerys of House Targaryen," she said, "widow of Khal Drogo, daughter of the last Dragon King, and I seek ships to cross the sea." Xaro's smile widened. "You seek many things at one gate. I bring dragons to it." That pleased him. She saw it at once. Not her boldness perhaps, not even the blood she named, but the recognition that spectacle had its own power, and she was willing to wield it. He turned to the captain with a soft flick of jeweled fingers. "Shall Qarth be known as a city that bars its gates against wonders? Open." The captain hesitated only enough to preserve form. Bronze chains clanked. Men leaned into beams. The gates groaned inward. Warm scented air breathed out of the city, carrying cardamom, flowers, roasting meat, and 1,000 subtler perfumes that made the whole of the red waste seem, for one delirious moment, like a bad fever someone else had suffered. The people behind Daenerys gave a broken sound, half sob, half prayer. Jorah stepped close as they began to move. "Be wary," he muttered. "They welcome the dragons more readily than they welcome us." "I know. Do you?" She looked sideways at him. "Must you always ask after I have already decided?" "Yes." That, absurdly, steadied her. They passed through the outer gate into streets paved smooth and clean, lined with trees, pools, and houses whose painted walls shone in the evening light. Men and women in gowns of vivid silk paused to stare. Some covered their mouths. Others smiled with avid interest. Slaves in collars of copper or silver carried trays of fruit, fans, jars of cooled wine. Daenerys' people looked like famine walking among painted dreams. She saw it in the way Qarthine eyes slid over the children's cracked lips and lingered instead on the dragons. The city took them deeper, through another gate and another, each more ornate than the last, each crowd thicker with spectators. By the time they reached the guest manses set aside for noble visitors, the word had outrun them. Mother of dragons, beggar queen, stormborn. Daenerys heard every version in the whispers. Xaro offered them shelter in a voice smooth as poured cream. Pyre invited her to see the House of the Undying, where truths were said to drink from the roots of the world. Quaithe only watched. Daenerys looked back once before crossing the threshold of the manse. Beyond the last gate, beyond the white towers and the scented streets, the red waste lay under the falling night, like a grave left open. She would not go back to it. Qarth cleaned the dust from them, but not the hunger. Hot baths came first, then food in such abundance that several of the weaker among her people were sick from taking too much too fast. Linen sheets, sweet oils, trays of figs split open to their ruby centers, fish perfumed with herbs Daenerys did not know, honeyed wine, cool water in painted jars. Every luxury arrived before she could think to name it. The guest chambers they gave her were larger than the house with the red door, as memory preserved it, though memory made poor architect. Painted screens glimmered. Silk cushions were piled so thickly on the floor that walking on them felt like crossing some overly pampered field. Her body welcomed comfort and distrusted it in the same beat of the heart. She let the servants scrub smoke and desert from her skin, though she would not allow them too close to the dragons. Those, now fed and sleek-eyed, prowled the room with proprietary unease, clambering over cushions, climbing chairbacks, nosing brass lampstands, hissing at their reflections in polished metal. The servants feared them, but fear had a glitter to it here. In Qarth, even terror seemed trained to flatter. The gown they brought her was white and open at one breast in the Qarthine fashion. Daenerys looked at it, then at the woman holding it up expectantly, and laughed. No. In the end, she compromised with cream silk cut close through the waist and loose in the skirts, with a dark belt and a cloak clasped high enough to cover what she chose to cover. Her hair, such as remained, lay as pale fuzz against her skull. There was no hiding that, no weaving it back into maidenly softness. The mirror showed her a face sharper than before, eyes larger, cheekbones harder. She looked less beautiful than she had in Pentos, perhaps, and more dangerous. When they brought her to supper, Xaro's own Daxos received her beneath a ceiling painted with stars. He wore colors no sober sky had ever produced, and more gems than any 10 men in the Red Waste had owned together. He came forward with both hands spread, every gesture calculated to seem uncalculated. "Radiant," he said. "The city is honored." "The city is curious," Daenerys answered. He laughed softly. "Curiosity is the beginning of devotion." At the tables set in the long chamber sat merchants, princes, guild leaders, and strangers from half the world. Pale men from the summer isles with feathered cloaks, squat traders from Yeti in cloth of gold, perfumed Qarthine nobles with lips stained by fruit and wine. They watched her openly. Not one failed to glance again and again at the dragons. Jorah stood a pace behind her chair in clean clothes, borrowed from the house, but still looked like a man armored in suspicion. He had refused scented oils and had accepted the bath only after Daenerys ordered it. Even washed, he wore distrust like a second skin. Food arrived in courses upon courses. Pomegranate seeds on chipped ice, tiny birds stuffed with dates and pine nuts, lamb in saffron, rice jeweled with raisins, dishes of spiced cream that Viserion tried to investigate with such insistence that Daenerys had to push his pale head away and cut strips of meat for all 3 dragons from her own platter. The sight of them feeding delighted the chamber. Some of the nobles leaned forward as though they had paid to see an entertainment. Daenerys hated them a little for that. Xaro noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like him made fortunes by reading want before it was voiced. They mean no insult, he said. Qarth loves beauty, rarity, splendor. I am not a jeweled monkey. No, he said, smiling over the rim of his cup. You are something far more expensive. Pyre appeared at her left without her seeing him cross the room. The hair on Daenerys' arms rose. The dragons are stronger than when you came to the gate, he murmured, blue lips scarcely moving. The undying ones would rejoice to behold them. They are not for your undying ones. No? His pale eyes flicked over Drogon where the black hatchling crouched on the table edge, red wings half open as if he would challenge the whole room. There are doors your little fires cannot open. Daenerys met his gaze and found, to her own surprise, that she was not intimidated. Disturbed, yes. Repelled. But fear belonged to knights in the Red Waste, to Miri's screams, to the stillness after a child's death. Men in silken warlocks with blue lips no longer seemed worthy of it. I did not come to Qarth for doors, she said. I came for ships. Conversation thinned around her, sharpened, turned avid. There it is, she thought. Now we speak plainly. Xaro set his cup down. Ships are easily spoken of and more difficult won. The seas are dangerous. Captains are greedy. Voyages westward cost dear. What do you ask? He tilted his head. So quickly? You wound me. Must every acquaintance begin with bargaining? Day. Every useful one. Laughter traveled around the table, though some of it was uneasy. Xaro did not seem offended. If anything, her bluntness amused him. Very well, he said. Let us bargain. You ask for ships to take what? A score of riders and a handful of children to a continent that has forgotten your name. Daenerys felt Jorah tense behind her. A continent that remembers my family well enough to have murdered them, she said. Which is another sort of memory. Xaro spread elegant fingers. And if I gave you ships, what then? A war? A landing on some hostile shore? A queen with 3 hatchlings and no army? Qarth is generous, but not witless. No. And some bishara. There it was too. Not mockery. Calculation. She saw in him not disbelief, but hunger to know how much she knew of her own weakness. Then lend me wit instead, she said. Tell me where to land. A murmur ran through the chamber. She had surprised them again, and surprises were worth more than gold among men who had seen everything money could buy. Xaro leaned back, studying her with renewed interest. Dorne, Jorah said from behind her, because subtlety had gone as far as it could. Or Pentos, if Illyrio Mopatis still favors the Targaryen cause. At the name Pentos, Daenerys felt old anger stir. Pentos had been refuge, never home. Illyrio had fed and housed them, yes, but as one fattens hounds for a hunt. She had no wish to put herself under another man's roof only to become another man's scheme. Dorne, she said aloud. Some of the Qartheen exchanged glances. They knew the name. Merchants always knew the names of ports, debts, resentments. Dorne was not merely sand and princes. It was trade, spice routes, a hard southern coast open to the summer sea. You choose a hot place for one born in storms, Xaro said. Interesting. Before Daenerys could answer, she felt eyes on her from the shadowed arcade beyond the lamplight. Quaithe stood there alone, still as carved wood in her dark robes. Masked face, hidden hands, unreadable posture. The noise of the feast receded around that stillness. Later, when the musicians had changed and the chamber blurred with wine, Daenerys slipped away under pretense of needing air. Jorah followed at once, but Quaithe reached her first beneath an arch where moonlight patterned the floor like broken silver. "You seek to go west," the masked woman said. "Yes. That is not the road the stars would choose for you." Daenerys was in no mood for riddles. "The stars have chosen poorly for me before." Quaithe's hidden mouth might have smiled. The mask made it impossible to say. To go north, you must journey south. To reach the west, you have gone east. This much you have already learned. Learn also this: the doors that open for need may close for haste. No, dear. I have no time for doors and less for ghosts. Ghosts have time enough for you. Jorah stepped between them then, not rudely but decisively. "If you have plain counsel, give it plainly." Quaithe's gaze moved to him. "Plain counsel is for plain men. None stand here." Then to Daenerys once more. "Beware those who would buy what they cannot breed, and those who would imprison wonder so they may sell admission to it." With that, she turned and passed back into shadow, soundless as smoke. Jorah watched her go. "I like masked prophets less than I like smiling merchants, and that is saying much." Daenerys looked toward the feast chamber where laughter rose again around Xaro's table, bright as bells. The city had fed her, clothed her, and called her marvelous. Yet underneath the silk and spice she smelled a market. Everywhere, a market. "I think," she said, "they mean to weigh me." Jorah's expression was grim. "Then let us see what they cannot afford." Qarth did not deny her ships. It merely tried to make her pay with herself. The next days taught Daenerys more of power than all the years of Viserys complaining had done. Men who would not refuse outright simply multiplied conditions until refusal disguised itself as courtesy. Captains bowed, praised, calculated routes upon parchment, sucked air through their teeth at the dangers of pirates, reefs, storms, Baratheon wrath, and uncertain profit. Merchant princes invited her to gardens fragrant with night-blooming flowers and proposed arrangements that turned, if one listened carefully enough, upon dragons changing hands. Even charity had hooks. Sharo's hook was silk. He received her in a pavilion overlooking one of the city's harbors, where masts rocked beyond latticed screens and the sea flashed blue-white under the noon sun. The room held low couches, bowls of chilled fruit, fountains scented with mint. Everything in it had been made to persuade the body it was safe to relax, and the mind it would be silly to remain vigilant. Daenerys remained vigilant. "You ask too little of the world," Xaro told her as servants poured pomegranate wine. "That is your first error. A queen should not beg passage like a spice factor's widow. A queen should command fleets, entourages, musicians, standards. A queen commands what she has." He smiled. "Then acquire more." "How?" "By accepting wisdom." He lifted a jeweled hand and let the rings catch the light. "Stay in Qarth. Let the city adore you. Let me adorn you. Marry me, and ships become trivial. Gold becomes meaningless. You may gather strength here. Why hurl yourself against a hostile shore with 50 souls when you might enter Westeros in 3 years with 300 sails?" Because 3 years was another word for never, Daenerys thought. Because waiting had been Viserys' whole life, and waiting had taught her the stink of power deferred until it rotted. Because every silk cushion in Qarth whispered sleep and imprisonment under different names. 3 years is time enough for dragons to become very valuable, she said. Xaro's smile did not falter. And for children to become dangerous. We all ripen with patience. No, Babadai, Azure. There, Daenerys said softly. You see, you do ask for the dragons. I ask for partnership. You ask for chains padded in velvet. For the first time, something harder flashed beneath his pleasantness. It vanished almost at once, yet she had seen it and understood. Sharo desired beauty, prestige, possession. He liked to collect impossible things and set them where lesser men might envy him. A dragon queen would have suited him admirably, provided she learned to purr on command. He did not ask her again that day. He turned the conversation to ports, winds, and the politics of the Jade Sea. Yet when she left the pavilion, she knew the matter was not finished. Men like Xaro never considered a refusal final until force, time, or another bargain proved it so. Pyre's hook was Shadow. He came by night, or seemed to, although the servants swore he had requested audience by proper forms. Daenerys found him waiting in a chamber lit by blue glass lamps that made his lips look darker and his eyes almost colorless. The dragons disliked him instantly. Drogon climbed to her shoulder and bared teeth no bigger than sewing needles. Rhaegal hissed. Viserion vanished under her cloak and would not emerge. The House of the Undying remembers your blood, Pyre said. Enter and the truths you seek will come to you. Crowns, betrayals, the paths that lead to victory. There are answers under those vaulted roots. No captain can carry, and no merchant can price. I have no time for prophecies. Then you have no time for survival. His words might have sounded wiser had his gaze not kept slipping, again and again, to the black dragon on her shoulder. Daenerys thought of Quaithy's warning. Those who would imprison wonder so they may sell admission to it. The warlock's hunger was not for a queen restored. It was for the living key in her arms. I did not cross the red waste to feed another man's mystery, she said. Pyre's fingers tightened on the sleeve of his robe. There are roads you do not see. There are ships in your harbor. Those I can see well enough. He left without bowing. After that, the bargaining sharpened. Daenerys sold nearly everything not nailed to memory. Drogo's remaining bronze bells. Jewel's visories had once caressed in Illyrio's manse as if touch alone might make them his. Fine horse tack from the dead khalasar. Silver bracelets. A chain of garnets Dora had worn on the night before the wedding. Every item parted from her like a page torn from a life she no longer had space to carry. Jorah objected to some sales and approved of others. Together they learned which captains prized immediate gold over future favor, which merchants feared Robert Baratheon's reach, and which saw in transporting a Targaryen claimant not danger, but a tale worth telling across 3 seas. A Mirish master would go as far as Volantis. A Qarthine trader with ships in the Summer Sea would carry them beyond if paid in pearls and oil contracts. A Pentoshi factor, hearing Illyrio Mopatis's name, offered discreet terms, and then attempted to triple his price once he realized Daenerys would not shelter in Pentos under another man's roof. Jorah nearly drew steel. Daenerys instead let Drogon crawl across the bargaining table and breathe smoke over the man's ledger until the ink ran and the factor reconsidered. She discovered she enjoyed that. Not cruelty. Never that, she told herself, though the line could be thin. But leverage. For so long, men had looked past her, around her, through her to the claim she represented, or the womb she carried, or the brother at her elbow. Now their eyes stopped on her and stayed. Not because they loved her, because she could alter their calculations. It was not affection. It was better. On the 5th day after entering Qarth, she met with 3 captains at once in a harbor hall, whose open shutters looked west over crowded quays. Lanterns one. Salt air mingled with the stink of pitch and drying fish. Outside, gulls cried and ropes creaked against masts. Within, a long cedar table held maps, cups of sour wine, and the shrinking pile of wealth she had not yet spent. One captain came from Myr, one from Volantis, one from Qarth itself. Between them, and with favors brokered through men who wished to remain unnamed, Daenerys could piece together passage sufficient for her people, horses and goods. Not a fleet. Barely even a convoy. But enough. The route is long, said the Volantine, tapping the map with a ringed fingernail. Through the summer sea and up around the coast if Dorne is your aim. Storms, corsairs. Islands where a woman vanishes and no questions are asked. I am not easy to vanish, Daenerys said. The Qarthine captain gave a thin smile. No, that is why the price is what it is. Jorah leaned close enough for only her to hear. They still think they are overcharging us. Are they not? Not by half, considering the risk? Daenerys looked from one lined, cautious face to the next. She thought of the Red Waste, of Dora under the fig tree, of Drogo burning, of a city where she might grow comfortable and die politely, far from the iron chair her brother had worn thin in speech alone. Then she pushed the last bronze bells and a velvet pouch of rubies into the center of the table. Done. The captains reached almost together. From the hall's edge, Qarth watched in still silence. When the contracts were sealed and the wine cups lifted, she stepped near enough to murmur, "Haste is a coin that buys regret dearly." Daenerys, tired of being warned in fragments, looked directly into the dark eyes behind the lacquer mask. "I have gone east. Now I go west." "Nah." Qarth inclined her head. "Then may your dragons be wiser than your counselors." Jorah heard that and scowled, but Qarth was already receding into shadow. That night Daenerys stood on the harbor steps and watched lantern reflections break upon the black water. Ships rocked against their moorings. Men shouted in tongues from all ends of the earth. Behind her, Qarth glowed white and jeweled beneath the moon, sumptuous as temptation itself. Ahead lay poison water for the Dothraki, exile for Jorah, war for all of them. She had bought passage with almost everything she owned. For the first time in her life, it felt like the price of something real. The harbor smelled of salt, tar, dung, and fear. Even before dawn, the docks were alive with labor. Sailors hauled rope, cursed over crates, rolled casks, and guided horses one by one up swaying gangplanks, while the animals snorted and fought the unfamiliar planks beneath their hooves. The sky over the sea was a pale iron gray, gradually paling toward gold. Gulls circled and screamed. A wet wind came in off the water and set every scrap of cloth fluttering. Dothraki hated it. Daenerys saw the hatred plainly in the way the riders stood too far from the edge, hands restless on aurochs and whips, eyes narrowed against the glittering expanse beyond the harbor mouth. Poison water. Water no horse could drink. Water that stank of rotten fish. Water that swallowed land and did not give it back. To ask them to cross it was to ask them to step not into danger but into sacrilege. Some would not. She had known that. Knowing did not make the dawn easier. They gathered before the gangplanks in a rough half-circle. The riders who had come through the Red Waste, the women and children who had survived because others gave them the last mouthful of water, old men who had no strength left for further roads. The ships behind her rocked impatiently. Jorah moved among the loading crews with his habitual grim competence, making sure the captains kept the terms they had sworn to. Drogon clung to the carved rail of the lead ship, wings half open in outrage at the wind. Rhaegal and Viserion battled over a dangling scrap of sail line. Daenerys stepped onto a coil of hawsers so they could all see her. "The sea is before us," she said in Dothraki. No one answered. They knew that much. "The road behind us leads to no home. It leads to dust, to the Dosh Khalan, to slavers, to graves under strange trees. I will not go back, I go west." A murmur, uneasy and low. She let it pass. "You have all seen what came from the fire. You have seen what rides with me. I do not promise an easy crossing. I do not promise rich plunder tomorrow, or fat grass, or cool streams. I promise only this. I will not live and die at another man's mercy. Not again." No. She had not meant the last words to come out quite so nakedly. Perhaps that was why they struck. Faces changed. Not all softened. Dothraki men were not made soft by speeches. But something answered in them, something that understood pride, captivity, the refusal to bend. "Those who will not cross may leave now," she said. "Take horse, food, water. What share is fair? No man will be hunted for choosing his own road." Drogo's head snapped up at that, outraged as always by lenience. But she held his gaze, and he subsided. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one family stepped back. Another rider followed, jaw set hard. 2 boys no older than 13 went with them, one weeping because he did not want to, and the other because he did. Soon 6 more had drifted toward the far end of the quay, uncertain and ashamed. Daenerys did not call after them. Better clean parting than mutiny mid-sea. When the leaving had stopped, the remainder seemed smaller than ever, yet also somehow truer. Aggo came forward first and knelt at her feet with fist to chest. "Blood of my blood," he said. Rakaro dropped beside him. Drogo, after the briefest visible struggle with some last remnant of custom and pride, went to both knees with such force the boards thudded. The dockhands nearby stopped their work to stare. "You will cross?" Daenerys asked them. "We will ride where you ride," said Rakaro. "Even on poison water?" she pressed. Drogo bared his teeth. "I like it no better for hearing its name 100 times. But I will cross it." No, "Pardon me," Aggo added. "When you take land again, we will be there first." Daenerys looked at the 3 men and thought how impossible this would have seemed beneath Drogo's tent. A Khaleesi naming blood riders, and blood riders swearing to ships. The world had cracked. Through the fracture, something new kept forcing its way into the light. "Then rise," she said. They rose. The loading continued. Children were shepherded aboard. Water casks thudded into holds. Jiki wept while coaxing a stubborn mare up the gangplank, then laughed at herself when the animal finally surrendered. Irri moved like iron, face expressionless, though Daenerys knew the sea frightened her too. The boy who had first bowed after the hatching carried sacks nearly as large as his body, and puffed with pride each time a sailor cursed him for getting underfoot. Sorrow did not come to see them off. Daenerys had expected he might, to make one more charming attempt at delay or possession. Instead, he sent a chest of candied fruits and a message written in flowing hand. "You choose hardship when comfort opens its arms. Remember who offered you the easier crown." She fed the message to Drogon, who tried to eat the wax seal as well. Pyre sent nothing. That, somehow, was worse. Quaithe appeared just before the tide turned, standing alone at the edge of the quay in a dark robe that the wind scarcely touched. She neither hailed Daenerys nor approached her. She simply stood and watched, masked face lifted toward the dragons. Daenerys considered going to her and asking for one clear truth, one straight answer, one sentence that did not need unpicking. Then Jorah shouted from the lead gangplank and the moment passed. He shouted because a man had sprung from between 2 stacks of cargo with a knife. Daenerys saw only fragments at first. A flash of steel, a sailor's cry, Jorah turning with astonishing speed for so heavy a man. The attacker was lean, dock tough, moving low and fast. His blade came up toward Daenerys' ribs as she stepped down from the hawser coil. Jorah intercepted him shoulder first, the force of the collision sending both skidding across wet planks. The knife rang away. Drogon shrieked and launched from the rail in a flurry of black wings. Jorah got one hand around the man's throat and the other to his belt dagger before the assailant could recover. The thrust was short and brutal. Blood spread dark on the boards. The man kicked once, twice, then lay still. Everything stopped. Gulls wheeled overhead. A child screamed. Rhaegal and Viserion joined Drogon in a frenzy of hissing, wings beating. The dead man's blood smelled hot and familiar amidst salt and pitch. Jorah rose breathing hard, dagger in hand. "Get aboard," he snapped to Daenerys. "Who sent him? If I knew, he would be less dangerous." The knife man had no tokens that answered anything. No seal, no letter, no sign but a calloused hand and the sort of boots any dock thief might wear. Yet Daenerys felt the shape of the threat all the same. Word had gone out from Qarth the moment the gates opened. Word it would go farther now that ships had been bought. Somewhere beyond the sea sat a king who had worn her family's crown for years, and would not smile to hear that dragons had hatched and were coming west. Robert Baratheon had just become real to her in a way maps and tales never made him. She met Jorah's eyes. "You think it was him? I think it could be anyone who fears what you mean to become." He wiped the dagger clean on the dead man's tunic, which is reason enough to move. So they moved. Daenerys walked up the gangplank with all the steadiness she could summon. The ship shifted under her feet in a way the earth never had. It felt wrong, treacherous, alive in a manner she did not trust. Behind her, sailors shoved off. Ropes were cast loose. Oars bit water. The harbor began to slide away. On the quay, the few who had chosen not to come stood small and already remote. Beyond them, the white walls of Qarth caught the newborn sun. Qarth was still there, dark and solitary amid color and stone. Then the ship turned and the harbor mouth opened ahead like a wound cut into the world. The sea humbled everyone. By sunset of the first day, half the Dothraki were vomiting over the rails and cursing the water in inventive, fervent detail. The women fared little better. Even Drogo, who would have fought a lion to prove disdain, went gray around the mouth and lay flat on the deck for an hour with one arm over his eyes. Ago pretended indifference until a swell caught the ship broadside and sent him sprawling into a pile of rope before 2 sailors and 3 children. Rakaro endured in silence, which, from him, was near heroic. Daenerys discovered that the sea wanted her stomach too, and would have it unless she fought. She fought. Pride alone kept her upright through the first night. Fingers knotted white around the rail. Face turned toward darkness so no one could be certain whether the wet on her cheeks came from spray or sickness. Jorah stood with her until moonrise, broad as an old carved mast, seemingly made of stronger timber than ordinary men. "You may go below," he said once, "and prove them right." "About what?" "That a queen is made ill by motion. A queen is made ill by poison and survives it. Motion is hardly a grander enemy." She almost laughed and instead retched over the side. Jorah, to his credit, said nothing wise for several minutes after that. The dragons loved and hated the sea by turns. They hated the first wind, which buffeted them and filled their wings before they had learned what such force could do. Viserion clung to Daenerys' sleeve so hard he tore the silk. Rhaegal crawled beneath a coil of rope and would not emerge until bribed with bloody strips of fish. Drogon alone treated the deck as conquered ground. He prowled the railings, snapping at spray, launching himself in short, furious hops whenever a gust lifted him. More than once he had to be snatched from disaster by Jorah or Daenerys before he flung his little body too far beyond recovery. Yet even his boldness could not mask his unease when thunder rolled. The route west was longer than the word west made it sound. They passed other vessels at distance, some merchant, some lean and suspicious. They skirted islands no one aboard wished to visit. Days stretched into a rhythm of watch changes, creaking timbers, brine-stiff cloth, and the endless breathing of the sea. The blue of it changed as Jorah had said it would. Green in morning, silver under noon, ink dark beneath stars. Daenerys found that once she ceased trying to master its every motion, she could almost listen to it. Not as one listens to a friend, as one listens to a beast larger than empires. At night, wrapped in cloaks against the wind, she spoke with Jorah of shores she had never seen. "If Dorne proves hostile," he asked on the 6th evening, when the sky had gone bruised purple and the first distant lightning stitched pale fire across the horizon, "then we go elsewhere." "Where?" "Pentos if I must. Dragonstone if I can take it. But first Dorne." He studied her profile in the dimness. Her singed hair had grown enough to lie like soft silver shadow against her scalp. Salt had roughened her skin. The sea had sharpened her gaze further, if such a thing were possible. "You choose Dorne because it is plausible," he said. "I choose Dorne because it is angry." He made a small sound of approval. Anger can be useful. It can also be costly. Everything is costly. She said it without bitterness. That seemed to strike him hardest. The captain joined them later with his charts, pointing by lantern light to coasts and currents, discussing where fresh water might be had, which islands held pirates, how far north they must tack if storms drove them from the direct course. Daenerys listened as closely as she ever had to lessons in Pentos or prophecies in Vaes, Dothrak. Geography ceased to be names spoken by others and became lines of risk, refuge, ambition. Sunspear, Flanky Town, Cape Wrath, the Stepstones. Each place entered her mind as possible future rather than fable. When sleep came, she often dreamed of two kinds of fire. One was the pyre, devouring and birthing. The other lay ahead, not yet seen. Cities burning in sunset, torches on walls, beacons answering dragons. She did not always wake comforted by those dreams. Sometimes she woke with her hand around Drogon's warm body and her heart beating like a trapped thing because in sleep, victory and ruin wore one face. On the 9th day out of Qarth, the storm found them. Clouds had been piling since dawn, low and bruise-colored, with a pressure in the air that made even the sailors quieter. By afternoon, the sea had grown choppy and mean. By dusk, it had become a field of moving black hills under a sky split by white fire. Rain came slantwise so hard it stung bare skin. The sails cracked like whips. Men shouted through wind that shredded words into nonsense. Somewhere below, horses screamed in terror. Daenerys should have gone under deck. Everyone told her so. She could not. The storm outside matched too perfectly the one that had always lived in her name. To hide from it felt like surrendering her own birthright to fear. So she tied herself to the mizzen with sailor's rope and stood braced against the gale while Jorah cursed beside her and did the same. Lightning showed the world in savage pieces. A wave higher than the stern. Ago crawling on hands and knees to secure a hatch. Jogo vomiting and laughing in the same desperate breath. Sailors on the yardarms like insects in a god's fist. Drogon clinging to the rail with wings spread wide, eyes incandescent red in the stormlight. Rhaegal and Viserion had hidden under the overturned boat lashed to deck, but Drogon would not hide. He screamed into the wind as if challenging the sky itself. Then thunder answered, and for one impossible instant, a line of orange flame leapt from his mouth. Not much. A lash no longer than a man's arm, snatched away at once by rain and gale. Yet Daenerys saw it. Jorah saw it. The nearest sailors saw it and crossed themselves or prayed or stared as if at the turning of an age. Drogon shrieked again, triumphant. There! Daenerys shouted over the wind, though whether she meant the flame or the future she could not have said. Jorah laughed then, an incredulous bark of sound that the storm nearly swallowed. "Seven, save us!" he roared back. "You truly mean to do it." The ship plunged. A wall of black water hit them broadside and nearly tore her feet from under her. Rope bit her waist. For a breath, she hung at an angle between sea and deck, salt filling her mouth, hair whipped across her eyes. When the ship righted, she tasted blood where she had bitten her tongue and laughed as wildly as Jorah had. Not because danger was pleasant, because it was honest. The storm passed some time before dawn, leaving wreckage in its wake. One torn sail, 2 injured sailors, half the people below shivering in foul water and misery, and a deck strewn with snapped cords and splintered wood. Yet they lived. The ships that remained in sight still rode the swell. Morning broke cold and clear on a sea washed steel blue by the night's violence. Daenerys untied herself from the mast with stiff hands. Drogon, soaked and exhausted, climbed onto her shoulder and collapsed there in a black shuddering heap, smelling of smoke and salt. She stroked the wet ridge of his spine until his trembling eased. When the sun rose, it rose ahead and a little to the left, which meant little to her until the captain, hollow-eyed from the night's labor, pointed west by southwest and said, "Dorne lies there, if the winds hold." There, a word, a direction, a coast still below the horizon, Yet Daenerys felt it through her bones. She stood at the rail all that morning while the sea flashed hard white under the clearing sky. Below, her little people emerged one by one from the hold and corners where they had clung through the storm. Ago limped. Drogo swore at everyone, and thus restored order to the world. Rakaro checked the horses with solemn tenderness no one would ever mention aloud. Irri and Jaki spread blankets in the new sun. Children laughed, because children can laugh within a day of terror if breath remains in them. Jorah came to stand beside her, salt dried in his beard, one sleeve ripped to the elbow. "You should rest," he said. "No." He accepted that with a grunt. Together, they watched the west. Beyond the curve of the world lay Robert Baratheon on his stolen throne. Beyond it lay lords who had forgotten or forgiven dragon blood, princes who remembered too much, castles, ports, battlefields, banners, betrayals. Beyond it lay a continent that had shaped her life without once granting her a place in it. She had fewer than 50 souls, 3 young dragons, and a name that might open doors or summon knives. It was enough to begin. Daenerys drew a long breath of salt air and let it fill every emptiness the red waste had carved in her. Fire had given her the dragons. Dust had taught her how little mercy the world contained. Qarth had taught her what men would try to buy. The sea, in its fury, had taught her not to mistake fear for command. West, she thought, and the word no longer belonged to anyone else's dream. The ship drove onward under patched sail and hard light. Drogon slept on her shoulder. Rhaegal and Viserion curled together in a nest of rope at her feet. Jorah stood at her right hand, exile beside exile. Ahead, invisible yet certain, Dorne and war waited under the same widening sky. Daenerys did not look back.